Hi, my name is Joe Socci, and I'm going to be your instructor today for the calligraphy italic class. But before we start talking about the letters, let me give you a list of items that you need. You need a copy of the alphabet that we're going to be doing. You're going to be needing a page that slopes to the right as a guide, because the italic alphabet does slope to the right. And you're going to be needing a plastic covering to go over that way when you're writing the ink doesn't bleed through. And you're going to be needing a legal pad, ruled, wide ruled. That's important because the pen that we're going to be using today, or the marker, is in ratio to these lines, and I'll talk about that later. So we'll start talking soon about the alphabet. Before we start talking about the letters themselves, you're going to need some information about the page that you're writing on. I'm going to be referring to all different kinds of lines, and I'm going to give you the name of the lines, and we're going to talk about pen angle and slope of the letters, and the ratio of the pen that we're using. But before we talk about the pens themselves, let's start with the names of the lines. And it's important for you to jot it down somewhere, actually on the sheet. There's the names of all the lines that I'm going to mention. But on your legal pad that you have to practice on, the first line is the ascender line. Then comes the capital. Then comes the waist line. Then comes the first branching line. After that is the writing line. Next line is the second branching line. And the last line to complete this guideline for the one sentence is the descender line. Now this descender line also becomes the ascender line on your next line, and so forth. Now, how do I determine, or how are we going to determine how wide these lines are? That all depends on the instrument you're using. Right now, the one that I recommended for this particular notepad is a number 3 nib, and I mean there's many out there, companies out there, but the one that I'm using right now is an Elegant Writer, and it's made by Speedball. I mean, if you can't get that particular name, fine, but it should be 3 mm or millimeters wide. Now the reason for that is that each one of these lines, if you look at your chart, you're going to notice that there's little squares, and those squares represent the instrument that you're using. You need 15 of these squares to make one completed line. 5 for each completed section of the line. So you got 3 sections on the line. 3 5 nib sections. Okay. And in addition to that, you're going to notice on the first line here that there's a little square, and it's cut on the corners diagonally, and that gives you a 45-degree pen angle. Your letters are done with a 45-degree angle throughout the whole letters. If you don't maintain that 45 degrees, you're not going to get this thick and thin beauty of the italic alphabet. And in addition to that, the letters slope to the right of a 90-degree angle at, and you'll have all that information on your charts. They slope to 5 to 10 degrees to the right of a 90-degree angle. Okay. That being said, let me just show you some different size markers or pens. For example, this is much bigger than that, so I would need 15 of these to make one line. And as you can see, 15 of these is a lot bigger than this. Here's a different example with this marker, 5. To complete one line, I need 15. So as you would see, the line would be a lot bigger. So it all depends. This is extremely crucial that you know what pen you're using and how to do the ratio, because eventually you're going to have to write. You're not going to be writing on legal pad that's ruled for you all the time, and you would have to rule your own lines. And you can go much smaller than this, or you could go much larger than this, and that'll give you your true ratio. Next, we're going to be talking about the letters themselves. I'm going to talk about the shapes of the letters for this segment. We're going to break the alphabet down into family groups. We're going to have the oval group. We're going to have the vertical group. And then, of course, like everything else, there's odds and ends that really don't go into any kind of group. And we'll talk about that soon also. So to start writing, you got your pad, you have your guide sheet. Put that underneath your page. Make sure you have the right side up. It says top of page. Put it all the way up. And here we go. Get yourself comfortable. Now I'm not going to start writing all these lines. Names of lines again, okay? But we know that for any one set of whole completed line is 15 nibs. And where do we start these lines? Let's start with the yo. The yo starts right underneath the waistline. That's an oval letter. The next one is an E. Make sure on the E you end up on top of that branching line that I talked about. We have the A. Make sure also this oval, the counter shape meets about that midpoint or branching point. Actually, that branching line is the midpoint of your lines. This one up here is the capital line, but it's still, no matter how we slice it, it's their branching point. Okay, the next oval letter would be the D. The D oval. Again, remember that branching point and the counterpoints go on there. The next letter that's in that same family group is the G. Remember to keep your nib at a 45-degree angle, otherwise you're not going to get this thick and thin. By the way, when you start working with pen and ink, you're going to notice that your lines are much sharper, much clearer. Okay, the next letter is the C. And you go directly underneath your waistline. And you connect at the writing line. Don't go too far above, don't go too far below. The C, the G we got, the Q is the next one. Over, in, up. And use these lines as a guide. You don't have to go on the line, but use it as a guide to go straight. Follow that guide to have that slope 5-10 degrees. Okay, the next letter is the P. The P is the only letter that goes, well, I shouldn't say the only letter, but in this instance, it goes a little bit above branching point. Start going back, or the other way, or just plain without a serif. These are called serifs, by the way. And we hope to have more videos. That way I can go into more details about these letters. I'm trying to give you as much information as possible. The first few videos. Here's the Q. It's a variation of that one. Okay, so we go down. So here we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. We have 9 letters that are basically the same shape. Now you know how to do, if you know how to do the A, you should be able to do the rest of these. Or the O, or the O. The O is half of the A, the E, and so forth. So the next group is the vertical group. Okay, so again, we need five pen nibs to make one, another 5, and another 5. So that's 15 nibs total. All right, so the first letter there is the I. Again, this one happens to fall between your waistline and your writing line. The next one is the N. And after we do these letters, I'd like to talk a little bit about the spacing, because eventually you're going to have to put all these letters together into some kind of words, unless you're just writing letters all over the place. So there is a formula, believe it or not. It's not just random writing, and I'll talk about that soon. Okay, the Y is the same as the U. By the way, you have 3 different Y's here, but I'm not going to do all 3 of them. We got 1, 2, and down here, the other end one is 3. Okay, the next vertical group is the R. Now, when I say vertical group, I mean by the majority of the letter, or oval. The majority of the letter is oval or vertical. I know some of you might question me as to why are they vertical or oval, but we'll have the discussion in class sometime. Okay, we got the R, the J. Okay, the L. Got one here, and now we go with the K. The K is a little, not that it's difficult, but I just want to show you something here. As you come up, you start branching lining, and that's just a guideline, by the way. Over. Now, when you loop around, make sure this is on top of that line. Don't go under. Otherwise, what happens, this becomes too big, and it's going to be too top heavy. Okay, so there's only one letter in the alphabet that goes from extreme, ascender, descender line, whatever, here, to all the way down to the descender line here. Okay, so, and that's the F. Start right underneath your, in this case, it's an ascender, descender line. We talked about that before. Come all the way down, that branching point, it's time to go the other way. Then you have the F. Okay, and you go, the cross stroke on the F is directly below your waistline. What you should do also is twist your pen, decrease your pen by twisting to the right. You're decreasing your pen angle, and that'll make a narrower cross stroke. That's the same thing with the T. Okay, so you have 3 different T's here. I'm doing only the smallest one, but some of them are a little bit taller, and the tallest one is just about almost as high as the capital, but I wouldn't go that much further. Okay. What's important here also, I just want to show you something here, is to maintain your 45-degree angle, but don't lift the nib. The nib has to be flat against the paper at all times. This can't go up, that can't go up. Because if you do, you start getting little, the ink just doesn't get absorbed because you're lifting your pen. So make sure that your pen is flat on the page. All right, we're ready for the next line. So we know 5, 5, and 5. In the beginning, if this helps out, do so, okay? We know that this is top, this is the middle, so 1 top, 2 middle, 3 for the bottom, if that helps also. It helps for me in the beginning, that's for sure, because you can get confused with all these lines. All right, so we have the V. These are what you call the odds and ends. There's really no, they're not oval, they're not vertical. What are you going to do? That's we'll get to know them as soon as you start practicing often. That's the V. The W is the V, 2 V's. Okay, let's do this X. 45. Oh, okay. Now, what's important about the X is that you want to make the lower counter larger than the top. So you want to make sure that you cross when you come down the other stroke. You don't want to make that top too big. So I just made an indentation here where I want to kind of cross over. You don't have to do it that way. You can start from the right to left and come down. And here we go. Okay. What's important there is that this space counter is smaller than that counter. Otherwise, if you reverse it, you can see right away it's too heavy. Okay, then we have the other Y. Y. Start with that. Again, underneath your waistline. Okay, now you have either a choice of going to the left, to the right. You want to leave it plain, leave it plain. But what's important is that whichever, these are called serifs, whichever one you choose, make sure you're consistent. Okay, the next one is the Z, 45. Remember, with that 45, you get thick and thin all on its own. And you're probably wondering what this is. This is an ampersand, an and sign. Okay. And that completes, I believe, the alphabet. Next, I'm going to talk to you about the spacing and joining these letters together into words and sentences. I'm going to introduce you to the formula, if you want to call it that, on spacing. So, the general rule is this. If you have 2 vertical letters, then the spacing between them is the furthest. If you have a vertical followed by an oval, then this space between them is a little closer, or it could be the other way around, of course. It could be an oval letter followed by a vertical. These 2 spaces should be the same, or pretty close to it. If you have 2 oval letters followed by each other, it can be combination of oval letters, a P and an O and a G, and so forth. Now, some of these letters are oval on one side and vertical on another. So you have to apply this formula. Then the 2 ovals are the closest together. Now, to make it a little bit clearer for you, between the letters, I put the, this particular color is green right now. You can use any color you want to highlight it. That way you can see it a little bit clearer on the video. But even for your own sake, when you're practicing, when you start practicing, try to do this as much as possible, because eventually you'll get these relationships the same as you're going along. You'll see it a lot better when you start coloring it in. Now you don't have to do pages and pages of this, but in the beginning, when you start practicing. So as a review for this, remember that 2 verticals, and I did a square here to show you again. That should be, now whatever width you choose in your, right, everybody does things a little bit different. That's, you have to be consistent throughout the page with that. If you choose X spacing on that combination, try to do it the same through the or similar. And not everything can be the same exactly, but close to it. Then the vertical and the oval is a little closer. The 2 ovals are the closest. Hope that's clear. Now you have some letters that are problems. And the general rule for that is that you try to put your next letter or the letter before closer together. You try to eliminate, what we're trying to do is to eliminate all this white space. And I colored that in with a color just to show you what you have to do is try to get your next letter just closer in. The V into the S, maybe a little closer. You want to eliminate as much of this space as possible. I mean, you don't want to put the letters on top of each other, but the closer you put these problem letters, the better. Now, there's other letters I don't have on here that could give you a little bit of a problem on spacing. Any open letter, for example, E, the C, the R, the branching on the R, you might have to make that branching a little shorter. The K, the long, and it's opened here and it has the tail, so you have to compensate for this. The X, it's on there. Okay, so lots of practice will make your letters look a lot better and more uniformed. Try to do this as much as possible through the to the page. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit on how to rule your own paper, because eventually you're not going to be working with a legal pad. You want to do some serious work, or you want to send an envelope to somebody, I mean a letter to someone, and to address the letter and so forth, you're going to need a smaller nib or a smaller marker. That'll be coming up next. But before I start talking about ruling your paper, I forgot to mention the spacing between words would be equivalent to the width of the letter N. So remember, you completed a word, space an N, the width of an N between that and the next word. Okay? All right, so now we're going to go on to how to rule your paper. I mentioned before that I was going to show you how to rule your own paper. Since you've graduated from the legal pad, you're not going to be writing with that all the time. You want to rule your own paper, you want to do some serious work, and this is how you go about it. Depending on which instrument you're going to be using, whether it's the large marker, a finer pen, you know that the ratio is 5 nibs for the top, 5 for the middle, 5 for the bottom. Now, when you rule your own paper, you really don't have to. You should know this by now, that you really don't have to rule your capital line. You don't have to rule your first branching line, and you don't have to rule the second branching line. If you want, fine. If you want to rule some more lines, that's okay with me. Just the way you figure that one out is that the halfway point between any line is your branching line. Okay, that's easy enough. The first is really your capital line, but it's still, no matter how you slice it, it's still a branching line. Okay, so we have that out of the way. You do your 5 pen nibs, the pen you're working with. Once you have a template, you mark it on your paper. Now you can do just that one set first, and then just follow it down, or you can measure it, see how much one line is, and measure all the points down, or you can get one of these instruments. These are very handy. See what the width of one section is, and go right down there. Make a little indentation. Where the indentation is will be where your mark is with a pencil. You certainly don't want to make these like I did right here. I just did it darker, that way you can see what's going on. You want to make them as light as possible. Okay, once you have your paper taped down, you get your T-square. So now you're going to have to go into a little bit more money to get a few other items. So you might even have these at home. And with a pencil, just go right down wherever you made the mark. Okay. Now again, you can make those lines if you want. Fine. If not, just skip the just skip ruling the branching line. You should know by now where that branching line is and where that capital line is. A little less to rule. And keep practicing. Look out for more videos, and I hope to have you in class soon. Bye now. Before we were talking about letter shapes, and I was talking about and showing you the different shapes. On the oval family, I forgot to mention the B. So let me do one right now. You start off right underneath the ascender line, come all the way down to your writing line, a little loop, pick up the nib, come back up, the waist, and loop around. Okay, so hopefully I didn't miss any other letters, and we'll get on with the rest of the letters. The J, you start right underneath your waistline, down to your second branching line, and you loop over, doing that serif, and that's the J. Another problem letter that I didn't put on the chart, which I'm going to be doing now, is the S. The S has a open space on the right and it has open space on the left, so the rule is to again tuck these problem letters closer in to each other, or to the letter before or to the letter after. In closing the class, I wanted you to know that the chart that we are using is the chart that I was taught by Don Kuntz. You'll you'll see his name or initials on some of these charts. And he was a professor of art at Queens College, also at Cooper Union. And whatever he taught me in those calligraphy classes, I had quite a few of them with him, I am trying to teach you. So hopefully I have done that well. See you at the next calligraphy class. Bye now.